You ready to go? Okay, go. Let's see what happens. You know, it's got it up. And
so today, it's October 3rd, 2017. We've been doing the mouthpieces for how long, Ian?
is this a quiz or something?
Yeah, it's a quiz.
I have no idea. 3 years?
I don't know, I'm just
I think
curious.
it's 3 years. I think we've been working on them for 3 years, yeah.
So, what drove you to want to create a mouthpiece line?
I've always been a bit of a gadget freak. I had a huge collection of mouthpieces anyway, and along with a huge collection of instruments, and I was always looking for the ideal equipment for a specific piece of repertoire. And I've always been the type of player who's wanted to play solo repertoire, from the classical stuff to kind of light music into orchestral stuff, opera things, modern music. And rather than playing them all the same, I've always wanted to change the way that I've done that. I wanted to have a specific sound for a specific composer or a specific style of music. And so that's required, the change of quite a lot of equipment. So that way I kind of finished it with a huge collection of mouthpieces and trombones, and I wasn't really happy with any of them. Maybe it wasn't all the mouthpiece. Huh?
So from playing in London Symphony to Vienna to all the chamber work, you found that it was necessary to change not just the instrument or the style of instrument, but also the mouthpiece?
Yeah, I think with instrument and mouthpiece design, up to a few years ago, you were kind of limited to the size and the style of mouthpiece, and that if you really had to change a lot. I think there's been so many advances in technology in mouthpiece, I don't need to tell you, that we can do things now that we couldn't do 100 years ago. So we can really change basic dimensions, basic sizes, to get something that suits really a specific style.
And that was actually one of the questions we had, was you do a lot, we actually are here with a Baroque trumpet.
It sounds like a trumpet.
So right now you're here with a Baroque, it's not a sackbut, but it's an alto.
Yeah.
A very tiny bell, almost more trumpet-like.
Mm-hmm.
How did the early period instruments, influence your design or your concepts? Or how do they?
Something that I've become sort of acutely aware of is that if you play Mahler's Third Symphony or Bruckner's Eighth Symphony on a Krushby or a Heckel trombone from 1880, 1890, it gives you an insight not only into what the sound of the composer intended, but it also sounds right. It has the smell of authenticity about it. I mean, honestly, when I played in Vienna, I always struggled playing the Magic Flute and Don Giovanni. Not because I couldn't play them, because I couldn't make the sound that I wanted to make. And then kind of quite late in my orchestral career, I discovered, sort of period instruments, historical instruments. Because if you play, the instrument you're talking about is a 1793 copy. If I play the Magic Flute on that, it's just right, it just works. And it's the same with a modern mouthpiece and a modern trombone. If the two things work together and they're the right sound, if it matches with the concept you have in your head, you've got all these different components. You've got how you play, your physiology, the sound you have in your head, the music you're playing, and then the equipment has to tie up with all of that. And that was what I became very aware of that with the historical instruments. Like I say, an old Krushby trombone on Mahler thinks, wow, okay, that's the sound. Yeah, that's how it should sound. And then you try and take that sound into a modern instrument, once you've got it in your head. Those things have to line up.
So I'm very fortunate in that I get to work with a lot of different artists, and I get to see the process evolve. But for you, coming in and starting the machine line, or the mouthpiece line, from start to finish, did it end the way you thought it would? Or how was the process for you?
I have a reasonable name in the trombone community, and the idea of making my own range of mouthpieces was quite logical, because I could put my name on a mouthpiece and make some money. And it would have been very easy to say, okay, here's a 4G, here's a 5G, here's a 6.5, put my name on it, out you go, and say, well, these are my mouthpieces. But first of all, that would have been dishonest. Secondly, who wants it? If you want a Baroque 5G, buy a Baroque 5G, you know? They're a good mouthpiece. If you like them, great, you know? So the idea was to rethink with the new technology that we have of manufacture, to rethink actually what we want, what we need in a mouthpiece. And if I'm going to be very honest with you as to how the mouthpiece that I play on, how this V3 was actually developed, the idea in my head was, and not many people know the history of trombone design, and I think it's worth pointing out that Vincent Bach made a 6.5. It was just his trombone mouthpiece. And it had a basic contour and shape. If you look inside a 6.5, you'll see that beautiful sort of cup shape. And then someone went to him and said, look, I need a bigger mouthpiece. Now, in those days, they couldn't go this way with the size of a mouthpiece. You know, they could only go down. So the 5G was just a bigger hole dug down. And then someone said, hey, I'm second trombone, I'm playing a Bruckner Symphony, I want a bigger mouthpiece. So, hey, guess what? He drills an even bigger hole down through the cup. So it's just going down vertically rather than left-right. You don't need me to tell you this. We need to tell these people this. And if you look at a Bach 1G on the outside, it looks exactly the same as a 6.5 on the outside. They're the same size blank. Except by the time you get to the 1G, there's almost no metal left on the mouthpiece on the outside. So it became very clear to me that actually mouthpiece design over the years has been based on ability and necessity, not on actual design, what we like to do. And this is the first time we said, okay, we don't have to just go this way, we can go this way as well. And to tell a little secret, basically what I took was I took the basic contour of a Bach 6.5L and decided that was probably what Vincent Bach thought was the ideal cup shape. And then sort of thought, well, what would it be like if we took that and went like this with it? So a larger mouthpiece actually would still have a nice cup shape instead of going straight down. And of course we did change the contours, as you know, so it's not exactly that, but that it was the same principle. What would be our ideal sort of shape, and then just make it bigger. We've got the 3, the 4, the 5. We're going like this with it, rather than just going like that. So that was the philosophy of it, the basic philosophy. As you know, that's easier said than done, because all of the, the airflow, the streaming, the weight of the outside of the mouthpiece, etc., has to be changed. But that was the idea. I didn't want to just regurgitate what's been happening for the last couple of hundred years. I wanted to design something individual and unique.
One of the things he focused on and how we deal with this with modern manufacturing techniques is that we have a cup program, we have an outer profile, and then we have backbore programs. And they're all sub-programs, and we can now choose an outer shape, a different backbore, and we can prototype much quicker doing this. And the mouthpieces come off the machine untouched by human. So when a human touches, and when they're chucking into a lathe, a lot of times concentricity can be affected. They'll never talk about this, but because they'll chuck the mouthpiece and it can go askew. Then you get crooked throats. That's why when you clock a mouthpiece and get it turned it, let's say 1, 2, 3, all the way around, it'll play differently because of concentricity being affected. We found that using a machine that no longer requires us to hand chuck was a huge leap forward. Also being able to change rapidly, so we don't have to have, and he touched on this, the rim width from a 3, 4 to 5 can all be the same now. They're not locked in by the old traditional one blank and one backboard rules them all. We don't do that. And so that it's been fun for me to be involved with these processes, because I've always wanted to work with musicians to bring what they found over their career to market. And that's been one of my personal goals, whether it be working with you or anybody. It's that when somebody has something special, truly unique, figuring it out, and then discovering why it's special, and then maybe even improving upon it, because that's the way forward in manufacturing and for performing. I wish I had the equipment that is available right now, back when I was in college. I mean,
I wish I'd had this when I first started playing in orchestras. I really do. And I think it's interesting to note that with the design of the trombone, we were looking back in time. we were looking back to what the great instrument makers were doing 100, 150 years ago, and seeing what we could bring from there into today's instruments. And if we're honest, we're still trying to find out what that magic touch was that they had back then, because they did make some incredible instruments. With the mouthpieces, we're not looking back, we're looking forwards because of the technology we have. In all of the research I've done, I've never found an old mouthpiece, 1860, 1880, 1930, whatever, that I've thought, wow, that's what we're going to be doing. You know, I think that mouthpieces are still evolving and moving forwards.
I would absolutely agree with that. It's been fun to be a part of that
Yeah.
as well. Okay, the ideal mouthpiece, if it exists. Orchestral playing versus solo playing.
Mouthpieces.
Yes, for you personally. Do you feel the need to change, or do you just play the one mouthpiece right now?
I play the one mouthpiece. I have an enormous collection of mouthpieces. I have 200 mouthpieces. I'm very lucky. I have someone who makes equipment for me. Whatever I want, whatever I need gets made. The V3 is the mouthpiece that I use all of the time for everything. You know, throughout the whole of my career, I've changed my mouthpiece on a regular basis. You know, I went from Danish 4 ALs, 5 ALs, 5 ABLs, Schilke 51, Bart 5G, 5GB, you know, into all kinds of, then some of the sort of more small boutique things. But I was recycling them the whole time. So in the course of a year, I would probably play 4 or 5 different mouthpieces. This and its forerunner, the S, is what I've been using now for 5 years. And
which is probably the longest you've ever been on one mouthpiece?
absolutely. And a couple of times a year, I get my huge mouthpiece collection out and go through and think, come on, this one must be better. And for me, it's not. This is, so I'm very lucky. I'm kind of like someone with itchy feet. I always want to change things. I want to take my career in a different direction, play on a different piece of equipment on my trombone, play on a different mouthpiece. But I'm kind of quite addicted to this one, I have to say.
Now, over 20 years now doing what I've done, or doing what I'm doing, excuse me, I've seen people and heard mouthpiece mistakes. Can you, what is one of the biggest mistakes you see or hear, and how can a person identify that problem and find a solution, in your opinion?
In the way people choose their mouthpiece.
Or even what they're playing on currently, yeah.
Right. There are 2 types of trombone player. There's what's called what I would call the head player or the chest player. And that means basically the type of player who either needs resistance in their playing or needs freedom in their playing. And it's very important to identify what you are. Not what your teacher says you are, or not what you want to be, but what you are, and to be comfortable with that. I'm a resistance player. I need some resistance in my setup, in my playing. My body is very relaxed when I play the trombone because I always have some resistance, firstly here, and secondly somewhere in the instrument. And that means that my body's very relaxed, just pushing against the resistance. There are other people who want absolute freedom, but still they need resistance in the system somewhere, and that usually comes down here. Which I personally don't find very healthy, but, you know, I'm way past dealing with right and wrong. There's only difference, you know? So I think the important thing is, particularly in this country, we're sitting now in the USA, there's a style of playing that is based on freedom. Just really, really letting the air go and using air and letting air go through and really working. And that is too much for many embouchures. It doesn't work for 50% of the players. I think we're missing out on a lot of fantastic players in this country because they're resistance players and they're trying to be open free players. It just doesn't work for them. So that would involve a video that's about 12 hours long, but you know.
I have a different terminology. I always use the term compression. That it's the right amount of resistance or compression so that the person can then resonate as free as possible.
Right.
And when you achieve this type of resonance, the feeling is good. It's like hitting a golf ball correctly.
Absolutely.
It flies versus hitting going incorrectly.
And your body feels great.
Yes.
You know, it's, I mean, I can boil down the choice of equipment to one thing. It's finding an instrument and a mouthpiece that matches the resistance that you need. It really is as simple as that. We can talk about the sound that we get from this color bell or that color tuning slide or whatever, but basically the resistance of those two things together has to make your body feel comfortable. And not just in the middle register, and not just in, but when you play all across the register, your body is, I like to say, it's neutral. Your embouchure and your body is neutral.
And then you get a higher efficiency out of this,
Right.
which then endurance becomes not such an issue.
Right.
You just had an experience after ITF where you were sick for a period,
Yeah.
but then you came back. Can you talk to me? You mentioned this a little bit in passing about how you had to come back to the instrument and you had a recital come in. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, I had a holiday in California, which was very nice, and towards the end of it I got pneumonia. And so I didn't play for 2 weeks when I was on holiday, and then another 2 weeks afterwards because I was really quite ill. And then I had 5 days to practice before a 1.5 hour recital. And it was good, I think. I don't like to talk about my own playing, but I felt very comfortable with it. I was very happy with it.
But this comes about because of the higher efficiency and understanding the compression that your body physically needs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So understanding yourself and what you need to be able to last an entire recital and not just gearing yourself towards that one excerpt and then sit.
Yeah.
And then play the next excerpt and sit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I look at these things and I wish I would have understood these things. And so that's kind of why I wanted to focus on this for other people, because I think many times we go to the practice room and we just beat our heads against the wall until we think our work's done for the day and we leave.
I never hurt my face. I don't believe in breaking muscle and repairing it. I've been through that phase when I was in my 20s. When I'm practicing now, I'll push myself to the point where it's going to break or where it's going to hurt, and I stop. That's it. I'll leave it. I will not break my face. And the next day, that point where you get tired will be a little bit further away. If you break your face when you're practicing, you could destroy it for a week. You could lose a week's practice. Working hard, you can work hard in your head, but don't hurt your body. That's when you play the trombone. So you need that instrument, the trombone and the mouthpiece that's going to work for you. I'll give you a country for example, France. There are so many beautiful trombone players in France. Really lovely players. I love the style. I love the people. And I see so many French trombone players struggling to play on a mouthpiece about the size of a 6.5 because that's what so-and-so plays or so-and-so plays or so. And it's like de rigueur, you have to do it. You have to play on that to get the sound, and it just doesn't work for people, mouthpieces are like a pair of shoes. I love Michel Becquet's playing, but I wouldn't wear his bloody shoes because they wouldn't fit me.
Now talk to me about the differences. We just had this experience. What happens on this side of the bell versus out in front, and equipment, mouthpieces and or instruments. What are your thoughts on that? How do you get around that?
Right. There's the two things. One is you have to find the resistance that suits you. So your body's in neutral. Everything's relaxed, it works, you feel comfortable. And then you need a very trusted pair of ears on the other side of the bell. Because I've played instruments, where you sound like Joe Alessi on this side and Arthur Pryor on that side. It's just that you can feel really great. I'm not going to name.
Yeah, of course,
I'm not going to name any instrument types, but there is one particular one with a certain valve, and you feel like you're playing in the Chicago Symphony in 1974, with Schulte in a Bruckner Symphony, giving it everything. And on the other side, you sound like Tommy Dorsey on a tiny little trombone, and it's gone very bright. So there's the two things. One is the body feel. The other is that you feel good about the sound that you're making. And then you need someone on the other side who can listen and you can trust them. Someone who can do a proper fitting for you,
And today we just went through this and playing some different instruments, and then we recorded, and then we went and actually sat down and had 3 sets of ears listening to the playback that were there. One on this side of the bell, and then the others. And then we actually went around and had other players play it. And it's amazing, the feedback doesn't always match. And so it's very important to not fall in love with one aspect too quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But when you find that feel, then you have to find the sound that's correct for the audience. Because if you feel great, but the audience isn't buying it,
But I mean, just one thing from the pedagogical point of view for people who are listening, what you might find helpful. If you find you're in a situation where your mom and dad have spent a fortune and bought you the instrument of your dream, and then you get the horrible news that actually you sound good here but not very good on that side, don't despair. In many cases, that comes from the individual trying to make the biggest, warmest, darkest, roundest sound right here. And you're probably taking it out of the center. And if the more you try and make a focused, centered, solid sound, not trying to make a big sound. I never try and make a big sound. I always try to make the most focused, centered possible. And then you get the same sound on this side as that side. So that's just an aside from anything else we're talking about today. If you find yourself in that situation, don't despair. And just to add what Christan said, what actually was, we tried an experiment with a bell that we tried this afternoon. It's not this one. And I knew what he was telling me, but I didn't care. It felt so great. I just wanted to take the bloody thing home. You know, I mean, I didn't care whether anyone else enjoyed it. I was loving it. It just was the best thing from comfort that I've ever played.
and that's, we've all been there. And I've been there many times, and I don't trust equipment until I put it to the test, the true test on the job. Sitting next in the hall, in your environment. People always ask me when they try something, I'm saying, yes, that sounds good right now. But in my mind, it means nothing until it's tested under fire.
Right.
Tested with the people, your peers, that you play in the hall that you play. I've been through this with St. Louis, New York, Boston, players all over the world. Not just those orchestras, but all over the world. And it's the same thing. And I'm always a little reticent until it's fully tested in the hall, in the environments. And it's the same for you. What we're working on today, I'll believe, in another month or 2 or 3, because now it's proven itself.
Mm-hmm.
Not just to you, the player, but in the halls, performing under. And in my mind, that's the definition of professional. Mm-hmm. It's people are capable of using this equipment to make a living.
Right.
And that's a huge responsibility that we bear here at Griego, and at my other job at Getson. I mean, it's that mentality that we keep, and I think that's something worth remembering, because so many people just stamp professional on everything nowadays and just say it's professional.
Yeah.
And that's a term that I think is overused now, and it's something that we really value here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say that, the word, you're constantly searching, as I am,
Yeah.
which is, I think, why we work so well together, is because the whole of life is a learning process. And you will never stop trying to make the ultimate mouthpiece or the ultimate trombone. You will never make it. As I will, I will spend the rest of my life trying to become the ultimate trombone player. It's never going to happen. But that's the direction that we're going, and we'll take any little 0.2% from here, 0.2% here, like a Formula One racing car, just to get that extra little bit of speed to help you doing things. And there are really very few companies in the world who are doing that, and we have to do that. We can't stand still.
Okay, next question. Dennis Wick was a mentor of yours at a young age. Did the two of you ever discuss instrument design or mouthpiece design? That's just from a personal level, I'm curious.
Yes, we discuss things, and Dennis may disagree with this, but I believe I was the person who told him that the outside shape of a mouthpiece made an acoustic difference. And I seem to remember him saying, "No, really? No." And shortly thereafter, the heavy top came out. No hard feelings. I'm not making any claims. But yeah, we did discuss things. He helped me far more than I helped him, I would say, because he's that much older than I am. Instrument design, no. I don't think Dennis was ever quite involved in a really big, successful instrument development project. But the mouthpieces, yeah, sure, we talked about things. Yeah.
I always respected his work from my time at, even dating back to Texas Tech in, I believe it was 96 or 98, or 97 when he conducted our trombone choir. We had lessons, and I'll never forget his high D's, that he would play for me. Oh no, this is how you do it. And I was like, great, that's how I do it.
Yeah, Dennis, still, I would believe now that even at the age of 86 or 87 or what it is, I think he's possibly has the best top F in the world. Like, he might not have any other notes left to him, but I think he may still have the best top F in the world. He was a remarkable player and a remarkable teacher. I had the great fortune of hearing him playing in the London Symphony Orchestra. Incredibly exciting, really, really exciting player. Fantastic.
What other things do you want to focus on?
In this,
Yeah.
sticking to the mouthpieces, would be urging people to think differently and to try and work out what's right for them and to try different things. Go to fairs, come to see you, whatever, try different mouthpieces, get different ideas. But I don't know how far we can go with that without it sounding like, hey, buy our mouthpieces,
So many times when people talk to me on the phone or even at a trade show, they'll say, well, there's so many options, what should I do? And I talk about how to choose an instrument. And for me, I test thousands of instruments, I really do. And it's very basic for me. I start with an F scale playing down, ta 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 ta, and I come back against the valve because there's an enormous amount of pressure coming back. And if it starts responding well, okay, the horn's decent. And I go to E major, and then down to E flat, D flat. If I can start on a tenor, get down to D, a D flat scale, descending in the staff down, and it's responding, then I know the response, and if it's pretty even, is pretty good. But then I'll start testing the lyric or the resonance of the horn after I test the response. If it doesn't pass that test, I move on.
Right.
And so with mouthpieces, I think it's easy, as with instruments, to fall in love with one aspect of it.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm very careful, and I tell people, don't fall in love with one thing, because they might try an Edwards that I put together, or is at the show, or a Bach, or a Kahn. Brands, it means nothing to me. I think that the artist or the musician, hopefully is a musician, first and foremost, will focus not on one aspect, but on the entirety of their decision at that point. And I tell everyone, try everything, and then try these things that we're offering. Don't be influenced by a salesperson, myself included. And I tell people that. I said, I'm biased. I make a living selling these products. And we do. We're thankful for you buying them, by the way. But you have to be strong enough in your approach to not just buy different. We're not trying to sell just different, but we want to sell something that will allow you to achieve a higher level of musicianship. What's your take on that?
I would, yeah. I have my own practical sort of starting point as you do. If you take from bottom B flat to top B flat, as a trombone player, that's where you're going to earn your money. And for me, I have to feel totally comfortable at that point. In between those two notes, the notes have to speak. All of the slurs have to be very, very smooth. I have to feel relaxed. I'm quite happy to have to work on my register above the top B flat and going down into the low register, because that's not where I'm living. I'm living in that 2 octaves there. Of course, it's amazing if you can get something that will do all of those things for you, which I'm very lucky I do. But I hear often, as you say, you've said it quite succinctly, that students have a problem with their high register. They go to a music shop and they come back with an instrument and a mouthpiece where they can play high, but they've forgotten that the middle register sounds terrible now. And that's where we live most of the time. So getting a good balance over the whole register is very, very important. And don't, like I said, it's okay to have to work above top B flat, We all have to practice it. But it's not okay to be insecure in the middle register, because if you're insecure there, you're going to have a very unpleasant time, Let's not forget how we earn our money, when a conductor, for all conductors talk about art and fantasy, when they go like that, they want the note to come out, and if it doesn't come out, they get grumpy. And that's usually in the middle register.
And the other thing I hear more than anything is people playing more forte, or fortissimo even, rather than focusing on the soft resonance. And I think that's crucial. And I think that the soft, the touch approach, and being able to resonate completely at a soft volume, for me, it separates many people, because a lot of times if a person plays soft, the sound gets very small and distant. That's not viable in my opinion.
You know, on Christmas Day, when your grandmother's had too much sherry, she can probably play quite loud on your trombone, and she can do really good glissandos as well, you know? It's actually, that's not what we should be testing. Anyone can do that on a trombone. The quiet, you know, our greatest asset as trombone players is the ability to play quietly and relaxed with a beautiful sound. Anyone can play loud. We all like doing it, of course, but we need to have that working in the quiet zone. Yeah? So that's what I would say. And if you can be brave enough to find the equipment that works for you over the whole range, with someone helping you, I think that's a good thing. Rather than saying, play this mouthpiece and this trombone because so-and-so plays it or whatever. It might work for you, it might not. It's really a risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's enough people out there that can help you through this. If you have any questions, just give a call. I always tell people, I mean, I deal with this stuff day in, day out. And there are other mouthpiece makers that can do it as well, and they can help you. But like Ian or many other artists, they're willing to come here.
Well, you see, you are different to many people in your position, is because you listen to me and everybody else you work with no preconceived ideas of your own as to what a trombone should sound like or how I should sound. What you first do is you get to understand me and Joe and Toby and whoever else. You get to understand what their strong points are, how they want to play, what their priorities are, and what their best bits are, and you try and find equipment that's going to enable them to do that. And certainly for young players, when you go and have someone help you choose an instrument, it's very often a problem that you'll be dealing with the priorities that that person has. You know, I like a trombone to sound like this, and it's not about how the listener wants a trombone to sound, it's how the listener hears whether you're comfortable and what the sound is coming across like. Does it sound like you? Do you sound relaxed? Do you sound comfortable? So it's these preconceived ideas as to how we should sound, particularly in a young player. You know what? Get over it. Learn how you sound. Learn how you should sound, and go with it. Let me tell you something, and this can be cut if you like. Let's take the best trombone players that you know. Let's run them off. Christan Lindberg, Michel Becquet, Joe Alessi.
Cut. No, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Joe.
Don't tempt me. You know? Jürgen van Rijn. You can go on. You can include me in that list if you like. In fact, I'm a good one to include in that. I know, personally, all of these people's teachers. And let me tell you, none of these people sound at all like their teachers. Not a little bit. They are all unique.
Individuals.
So remember that when you decide you must sound like this person, otherwise you're not going to work. Hang on a minute, that guy didn't even copy his own teacher. And that's very important when you are deciding to pick your own trombone and your own equipment as to, I want to sound like this, I feel comfortable like this is what I'm going to do. The next great trombone players that come along are not going to sound like me. They're not going to sound like Joe or Christian. They're going to sound like themselves.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, it's been great having you here, Ian. We got a little bit more work to do ahead of us. We're always trying things. A lot of things will end up in the scrap bin. Maybe some of the things will be coming out in 2018. We'll see. It's a lot of fun to be on this side of the development and trying things and testing things. And if anybody ever visits, we always have this stuff that we're working on. You're more than welcome to try it too. That's actually how we do our development. It's not just here. It's through the feedback we get from players. And so a lot of times we'll start beta testing 3 to 6 months in advance before, and then we'll be in touch with players. Well, how is it working? How is it in the hall? How is it working in the section? And then based upon that feedback, that's what really drives us forward with our products. So I really can't, in all honesty, take full credit. You know, it's the market and the feedback that we get from the players that drives us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no question.
So thanks for being here, Ian.
Yep, great, pleasure.